The slot receiver is the most evolved position in football. It started as a role for guys who were too small for the outside, but just tough enough to survive getting hit over the middle. Decade by decade, the position grew into something defenses actually had to scheme for, and then Deebo Samuel showed up, and defenses ran out of answers entirely. We're going to trace back every other version of the slot receiver going way back.
You have to be fast, though.
You can't understand what he actually did until you understand the full position in its entirety and how he broke it. The original slot receiver wasn't a star. He was a guy who had to be smart and quick enough to catch the ball over the middle and tough enough to survive heavy linebackers bulldozing them in the middle. The position existed because teams needed a guy who could beat a linebacker in space and pick up a first down on 3rd and 6, and that was the whole job. Wayne Chrebet is the clearest version of what the position was built to be. He was 5'10", 188 pounds, and white, and he came into the league undrafted out of Hofstra. The Jets used him from 1995 through 2005, and in that time he caught 580 passes. Over 65% of those catches went for first downs, and he wasn't a playmaker in the traditional sense. He didn't score a lot of touchdowns, and he didn't take the top off the defense. What he did do was move the chains over and over in heavy traffic without flinching. Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola both called him the godfather of the slot receiver, and that's not an exaggeration. Troy Brown was another player that changed the game. He played his entire career with the Patriots, and in 2001 he caught 101 balls for 1,199 yards. That set a franchise record at the time. Brown was the reason the Patriots started treating the slot as a feature position rather than an afterthought. When Wes Welker arrived in New England in 2007, he credited Brown directly. He said Troy set the tone for why the position carried so much weight in that offense. The common thread between Chrebet, Brown, and every other slot receiver of that era is that they survived by being clever. They weren't winning at the point of contact, they were winning before contact even happened by reading coverages and finding creases. That worked, and it worked for a really long time. Teams started investing real resources into slot receivers because the math was undeniable. A linebacker trying to cover a receiver on a crossing route is a broken play before it even starts, and the slot receiver turned that mismatch into a science. But the ceiling was right there in the description. These guys could win.
It's crazy because like nowadays, would you consider like a tight end a slot receiver? Because, or like, it's kind of crazy to think to a time where slot receivers wasn't as like important, because slot receivers, bro, it's only 10 yards to get a first down. A slot receiver, 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards, and you're already at the 1 yard line. Like, it's so crazy how like that wasn't really established until like the 2000, like the late 90s, stuff like that, because I feel like you need a receiver like that so you can feed the ball to, that's tough, that's quick, and you can feed the ball to instead, because you don't always want to risk going down the field all the time. And sometimes defenses are just all in the box, so you can't really run the ball like that either. So
short areas, and they could convert third downs. They could run clean routes and catch the balls in tight spaces, but what they couldn't do was scare you. A defense could absorb a 100-catch season from a slot receiver and still feel like they had the upper hand. Those guys weren't going to run through you. They were going to run around you and be at best a third option for the offense. The position needed someone who could dominate and strike fear. For a long time, that player didn't exist. Then Wes Welker showed up and blew everyone away. Wes Welker went undrafted in 2004, and though San Diego picked him up, they cut him almost immediately. Miami,
that man was tough,
but for 2 years he was basically just a returner that you kept around because he was cheap and useful on special teams. The Dolphins finally moved him to receiver, and by 2006 he was leading the team in catches, which was enough for Bill Belichick to trade a second-round pick for him in March of 2007. At the time, that seemed like a massive price to pay for a 5'9" slot receiver that nobody had fully committed to yet. What happened next is the reason we are still talking about him today. In his first season with the Patriots, Welker caught 112 passes to lead the entire NFL. It wasn't just about the raw numbers, because the way he did it changed how defenses had to think. Most teams in 2007 were still built to stop what they expected, and they expected a slot receiver to be someone they could easily manage. They stayed in base defense with linebackers trying to cover Welker, but he ran option routes where he had to read the coverage and broke towards the soft spot. Tom Brady just knew wherever Welker broke, and while the idea sounds simple, the execution was on another level. We saw games where Welker had 11 targets and 11 catches because the defense didn't have a single player who could match up with him. Over the first 3 seasons in New England, West put up catch totals of 112, 111, and 123. He went over 1,100 yards 3 years in a row from the slot, which was something we'd never seen before, and he led the league in catches 2 times in those 3 years. He made...
It's crazy because when I was younger, I used to think Steve Smith was kind of like a slot receiver type because he was like shorter. But no, that's not what it necessarily means to be a slot receiver. Like, would you call Mike Thomas a slot receiver? Because all he did was like mostly slot routes. I mean, slant routes. I don't know, but on the top of my head, I can't really. Besides, like, oh, Cole Beasley, he was a good slot. I'm trying to think about who else. I can't really think of anybody else like that. But I know Cole Beasley, Julian Edelman, Wes Welker.
4 All-Pro teams in 5 seasons and turned a position that used to be just fine into the engine of a historic offense. The slot receiver stopped being a role player and became the primary reason the entire system worked. Julian Edelman eventually took over what Welker built and added a different kind of edge to it. He arrived in New England as a 7th round pick in 2009, and as a former college quarterback, he had never really played receiver at a high level. For 4 years, he barely saw the field while sitting behind Welker on the depth chart. But the team kept him around because he was a special teams ace and as tough as anyone in the building. When West left for Denver after the 2012 season, Julian finally got a shot to show what he could do. His 2013 breakout included 105 catches for 1,056 yards, and that was only the beginning of his run. What separated Edelman from Welker wasn't just the route running or the chemistry with Brady, even though both of those were elite. The difference was his physical edge, because Julian ran through the middle knowing he was going to get leveled, and he caught the ball anyway. He never tried to avoid the contact, and that toughness became his entire identity during the biggest moments of his career. In Super Bowl 49 against the Seahawks, with the team trailing by 3 and 2 minutes left, Edelman caught the touchdown pass that won the game. During the comeback in Super Bowl 51, he made a catch off a deflection that should have been impossible.
It's so crazy because like they know he was coming across the middle every single play, but they just couldn't stop him. But I was literally watching that game like this. I was like, bro, are y'all serious? Plug the middle. Plug the inside zone. I mean the mid zone, bro.
To keep off the turf. Then in Super Bowl 53, he walked away.
I think he had like 8 or 10. I think he had like 11 catches or something, like 10 catches. I don't remember, but I just remember him catching that ball like.
As a Super Bowl MVP. The Welker and Edelman era gave the slot receiver everything it needed to matter, including volume, reliability, and a quarterback who trusted the position completely, which was huge. If you had a player like these two, you had a real weapon that the defense had to account for on every single snap. Percy Harvin was a completely different type of problem. He wasn't like Wes Welker, where you figured that you just needed a different base package. He actually completely broke the defense. He came out of Florida in 2009 at 5'11" and 200 pounds, and after running a 4.39 40, he could line up at receiver, in the backfield, or as a returner. Minnesota took him 22nd overall, and he won Offensive Rookie of the Year immediately, because the league could see his talent, even if they didn't know how to stop it. His 2011 season is still insane. He caught 87 passes for 967 yards while adding another 345 yards on the ground.
That's a great rookie
That's a receiver
season.
Getting running back carries in an era where that almost never happened, and he finished with nearly 1,300 scrimmage yards. The most frustrating part of the Harvin story isn't just the injuries that derailed his career. It's the fact that no team ever fully committed to building an entire offense around him.
Bro.
Minnesota used him as a gadget player that they brought in for specific situations rather than making him the centerpiece. Seattle traded for him in 2013, but he only managed 1 regular season game before really getting hurt. And the Jets had no idea what to do with him in 2014. I mean, what's new? His career ended at age 28, and we never got a real answer to what he could have been in the right system. Golden Tate is a different kind of story because he actually got a consistent opportunity to show.
Golden Tate! Bro, how could I forget Golden Tate, bro? He was on the Giants, bro. Oh my gosh, Lions Golden Tate was insane, crazy, bro.
With elite run after catch ability could do. He wasn't the same kind of athlete Harvin was, but he was sturdier and much more dependable over the long haul. His 2014 season in Detroit resulted in 99 catches with over 1,300 yards, and almost all of that production came from what he did after the catch. Tate didn't just beat you on the route, he beat you because he had to break a tackle in the open field. And he was better at breaking tackles than almost any receiver in the league. What Harvin and Tate introduced together was a question the league hadn't really answered yet. Everyone wanted to know what would happen if the slot receiver wasn't just a technician, but a genuine physical threat. The Welker and Edelman model was built on precision and timing, but Harvin and Tate pointed toward a more violent style of play.
Yeah.
They were the kind of players who could tape a 5-yard
They were like mini tight ends.
hitch and turn it into a 15-yard
Pocket-sized tight ends.
linebacker. Brandon Stokely gave us a tiny glimpse of this in 2004 with Peyton Manning when he put up 10 touchdowns. But none of these players ever fully merged every skill into one coherent threat. Until Debo arrived. Debo grew up in Inman, South Carolina, and
Because teams, even though it's hard to understand, even though it's hard to admit, teams don't really commit to the slot receiver.
By the time he reached high school, he was already making.
That's just what it is, because like
single position.
they're not gifted enough to go down the field.
For a team that leaned on him for everything. Over his high school career, he finished with 53 touchdowns, which set a school record that still stands today. Recruiting services only rated him as a 3-star prospect and the 53rd best receiver in his class. South Carolina eventually signed him, and what followed was 4 years of constant injury and incredible resilience in roughly equal measure. A bad hamstring in 2015 limited him to just 5 games, before another hamstring issue in 2016 cut his season short again. Even with those missed games, he still led the team with 59 catches and 783 yards in only 10 appearances. The 2018 season at South Carolina was a statement he needed to make. He put up 62 catches for 882 yards and 11 touchdowns over 12 games. The performance that really got NFL scouts locked in came against Clemson, who was a top-ranked team in the country at the time. Debo recorded 10 catches for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns against a defense that sent multiple players.
I remember that game too, bro.
Next draft. San Francisco took him 36 overall.
Bro, that's when I was a huge Clemson bandwagon, bro. I was a huge Clemson fan, bro.
2019. He wasn't a top selection or a player that the league expected to immediately change the game. But Kyle Shanahan saw something in the way that Debo moved with the ball in his hands that didn't show up in his standard receiver evaluation. So the 49ers built him into the entire offense from day one. His rookie season was anything but a quiet introduction to the league. He finished with 57 catches, 802 receiving yards, and 6 total touchdowns. 3 of those TDs being rushing touchdowns. He wasn't just lining up outside and running traditional routes, he was taking handoffs, running jet sweeps, and carrying the ball in a heavy contact like a seasoned vet. The 49ers were already treating him as a weapon that the league didn't have a clean category for yet. Super Bowl 54 ended in a loss to Kansas City 31-20, but Debo carried the ball 3 times for 53 yards against that Chiefs defense. 53 rushing yards by a wide receiver in a Super Bowl is still the record today. The same mismatch that guys like Percy Harvin and Golden Tate had hinted at was finally being realized. The league had been looking for this type of player for years without ever fully finding him, but now he was sitting in San Francisco's film room at 23 years old and getting better. That was just the introduction to his story.
Yeah, bro.
The 2021 season is where Debo Samuel officially became the final boss. Week 1 in 2021, the San Francisco 49ers were playing Detroit, and Detroit was expected to be a bad team that year, and they were. But what happened on that September day had absolutely nothing to do with their eventual record. Debo caught 9 passes for 189 yards and a touchdown. He had become a master of yards after the catch.
Oh, he cooked.
There was a massive distance between each and every catch.
He was like a running back playing receiver.
The way defenders got their hands on him but couldn't finish the play, and the way 15-yard gains kept turning into 25-yard sprints. Shanahan had been moving Samuel around since the first day he got in the building, but after that Detroit performance, the usage shifted in a big way. Over the course of 2021, the 49ers lined up Debo in the backfield on about 11% of their offensive snaps. The number was a total nightmare for defensive coordinators. When he lined up as a running back, linebackers were responsible for him, and those players simply didn't have the athleticism to match him as a receiver. When he lined up wide, cornerbacks had to tackle him, and those smaller players aren't built to stop a 215-pound man running downhill. There was no good answer for him. Every personnel grouping a defense could try had a losing matchup built into it from the start.
And let me tell you, the stats don't always show everything, bro. If you go to the stats, okay, he doesn't have like you go down the line, he doesn't have 1,000. He doesn't. But the way he played and the way he impacted the game itself, of what defenses had to do to stop that man. I remember, bro. Like people didn't know what to do with him.
Then week 4 against the
They
Seahawks
didn't.
came, and he put up 156 yards and 2 more scores. The next week against the Cardinals, he finished that game with 4 catches for 95 yards
tough.
plus several carries out of the backfield. His final regular season numbers look like a total misprint. He had 77 catches for 1,405 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Then you add another 59 carries, 365 rushing yards, and 8 rushing touchdowns. Those 8 rushing scores set the NFL record for a wide receiver in a single season, breaking a mark that had stood since the 1960s. To find a combined production that looks like this, you have to look at legendary running backs like Roger Craig, Marshall Faulk, and Christian McCaffrey. Those are the only other players in NFL history to post 1,000 receiving yards and 5 rushing touchdowns in the same season. All 3 of those players spent their entire careers lined up in the backfield, but Deebo did it while being listed as a wide receiver. The playoffs didn't slow him down at all. During wildcard weekend against Dallas, he carried the ball 10 times for 72 yards and a touchdown. The Cowboys prepared for him the same way every other team did that season, which is to say that they didn't have a real solution and had to pick their poison while praying. He earned first team All-Pro honors and a Pro Bowl nod while being ranked 19th on the NFL Top 100 list at the end of the year. Every slot receiver before him had a ceiling built into their game that they couldn't quite break through. Deebo Samuel had mastered the position, took on another one for fun, and defenses across the league completely ran out of answers. Then right when you think nothing could stop his momentum, the story got a lot more complicated. The trade request hit April in 2022, and that shocked the entire league. He was just coming off a first-team All-Pro selection, and he told the 49ers and everybody else that he wanted out. It became a question of how he was going to get paid, as a wide receiver or as a running back. His success in both actually brought these problems. Those contract negotiations had dragged on for months, and the frustration finally boiled over, which forced the 49ers into full damage control mode. They actually fielded offers during the draft, but never found a deal that matches value. So the two sides sat in the standoff for 3 months until Deebo finally signed a 3-year extension worth over $73 million on July 31st. He admitted later that the entire process just wrecked him. When he looked back at the 2022 season, he called it awful in every single aspect. It wasn't just that his production dipped, but his preparation and conditioning were totally off because the contract drama pulled him away from the routine that had made his 2021 season so special. Tape and numbers proved he was struggling, as he finished with only 56 catches and 5 total touchdowns. Hamstring and ankle injuries costed him 3 games and slowed him down in the others, making the man who once made linebackers look obsolete.
He's slowly getting back to that though.
The real bounce back happened in 2020.
It's unfortunate that he's in the NFC East and is not going to count to nothing because the Big Blue is in the FC East. The Big Blue. We're going to lock him down every time.
900 yards and 12 total touchdowns. That touchdown count actually beat his total in 2021 because he became a much more reliable red zone target, even though his total yardage wasn't at that historic peak anymore. During a Week 13 game against Philadelphia, he showed everyone that the 2021 version of Deebo was still there by racking up over 100 yards and 3 total scores. He tore through a defense that had just been to the Super Bowl, even though they were awful that year, and the game served as a massive reminder that nobody has a real solution for him when the 49ers offense is clicking. After another loss in the Super Bowl that season to the very same Chiefs that they lost to 4 years earlier, the following year wasn't too kind. San Francisco chapter ended on a sour note in 2024. There was a sideline fight with a teammate that the cameras caught, and then he posted a tweet mid-season complaining about how many touches he was getting. He even started dropping passes at home, which led to boos from the same crowd he had played for over 6 years. It was clear the relationship between Samuel and the organization had simply run its course. The trade to Washington finally went down in March of 2025, and the 49ers only got a 5th-round pick for a player who had completely changed the game. Washington offered a totally different environment for him to work in. He joined a team led by Jaden Daniels, who was 24 years old and coming off one of the best rookie seasons of all time. Even though he was 29 and carrying 6 years of heavy wear on his tires, Samuel responded by leading the Commanders in receiving with 72 catches and 6 touchdowns. You weren't going to see those 2021 numbers again, but he was still a 30-year-old receiver who could win after contact and move the chains. He was still lining up all over the field.
Yeah, that's true.
Coordinators' nightmares on every single snap. Deebo's the only wide receiver in NFL history with 20 receiving touchdowns and 20 rushing touchdowns. Nobody else has ever done that, and honestly, nobody else is even close to his level. For a long time, the slot position was for guys who survived by being clever, which is what Corbett and Tim Brown proved. Then Wes Welker and Julian Edelman showed the position how to be great, while Percy Harvin and Golden Tate pointed toward a future that the league just wasn't ready for yet. Deebo Samuel finally arrived and became all of those things at the same time. Every version of the slot receiver we saw before Debo was just a single chapter, but he was the entire book. So there you have it. Watch this next video if you haven't already, and subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.